honourable member for?
The honourable member for Lethbridge.
Okay.
Thank you. Well, considering the current trend of this current government, I certainly don't take it for granted that I am able to stand in this place and to freely deliver a speech in the House of Commons, particularly when I am critiquing government legislation. Bill C-11 will put the CRTC in charge of regulating the internet. That is what we are discussing today. Former CRTC commissioners and other qualified critics have spoken to this legislation, and they have made it clear that it is an overreach and a violation of Canadians' right to freedom of expression. From the beginning, I have been a vocal opponent of this bill, and I have laid out my case for that. However, today, I'll remind Canadians and this House of the concerns I hold, as well as the colleagues that I share on this side of the House. Because of my outspoken nature on this bill, I have been ridiculed, I have been criticized, and I have even been called names by those across the way. That has been hurtful, it has been harmful, but I have proceeded. And the reason for this is because I am not elected to serve this government. I am not elected to make sure that their legislation gets through. I was put here by Canadians, for Canadians, and it is with them in mind that I stand in this place. It is with them in mind that I also fight against this incredibly draconian and regressive piece of legislation that attacks their charter rights as Canadians. There are two things that I wish to address today. One, the process that was followed with this legislation, and two, the content. Let's start with the process. I would be remiss if I did not mention the travesty that took place this past Tuesday. While most Canadians were sleeping, the members of the Heritage Committee met, and they were forced to vote on amendments without them being read into public record, which means simply numbers were given and members were asked to vote. The public was unsure of what we were voting on and what it meant for them. Zero transparency. No debate, no discussion, no questions, just shut up and vote. That was the message given. The process was cloaked in secrecy, and it was an inexcusable assault on democracy. Having been forced through the committee now, the bill is now before the House and will soon be forced on to the Senate. Let me now dive into the content of this bill. The Heritage Minister has been extremely misleading. He has told Canadians that more government control over internet content will somehow promote Canadian culture and help artists. This could not be further from the truth. My Conservative colleagues and I have met with industry experts, and we have met with digital-first creators, those who produce content for TikTok or YouTube, etc., and they have dispelled these myths. I would like to use their voices here today in order to defend their cause. Aubrey Roy, known as Auntie Skates on TikTok, she's a 47-year-old South Asian woman from Toronto. She made it clear that her success is based on freedom, not control. She said that I am not the right fit is a story I have been told my whole life. I'm too brown, I'm a nerd, I'm too old, I'm female, I'm not feminine enough, I'm not the right demographic, but I've never been the right demographic. My voice has been suppressed far too many times. That's not an easy thing to do because, well, I have a pretty loud voice. Somehow along the way, I discovered a platform that allows me to tell my story as I see fit in my own voice. Other people are indeed interested in my story. Somehow this tall, brown, old, and somewhat out-of-shape mom who skateboards resonates with people all over the globe. Authentic, inspiring, genuine content. That's Canadian content. Canadian YouTuber Lily Singh explained it best when she said, quote, "For Canadian creators who don't fit the mainstream mold, the openness of YouTube provides the opportunity to find their niche among billions of people." Again, freedom is what leads to success. Morgan Fortier, co-owner and CEO of Skyship Entertainment, said, "We've seen firsthand that when barriers are removed and Canadians are given equal free access to an open platform and a global audience, they can take on the world." For Canadian creators, YouTube is a level playing field on a world stage. It doesn't matter who you know or what you like. Any Canadian with any idea and a smartphone can be a creator and find an audience on YouTube. She went on to say, if this bill passes as written, the CRTC could determine what content should be promoted in Canada through discoverability obligations. This approach puts the regulator between viewers and creators, handing the CRTC the power to decide who wins and who loses. You see, if Bill C-11 passes through the Senate, it will not create a level playing field. Instead, many digital-first creators will be harmed as the government, through the CRTC, picks winners and losers. Not only that, but in the name of protection, the CRTC will build a wall around digital-first creators. And this wall will actually prevent them from being able to reach a global audience, which is what they depend on for their success. And Madam Speaker, please know, our Canadian digital-first creators are amazing, and they are achieving tremendous success around the world. Their success, however, will be severely thwarted by this bill. Scott Benzie from Digital First Canada explains, this bill has the intent of promoting Canadian content to Canadians. And while admirable, most Canadian creators do not care solely about the Canadian market. The platforms are built for global discovery. Local discovery is a recipe for failure and jeopardizes success, like the Indigenous creator renaissance on TikTok, Canadian musicians seeing global recognition, and the world-class gaming industry. Let's talk further. Let's talk about freedom and choice, values that all Canadians hold dear. Right now, virtual codes known as algorithms are set up on the internet to show Canadians more content that they love. Personal choice is honored in this process. Bill C-11 will change that. Instead of using algorithms to give individuals more of what they want, the government will insist on actually that YouTube and TikTok and Google use algorithms to give more of what the government wants Canadians to see. It's incredibly dictatorial. It's dangerous. Jeanette Patel from YouTube explained, Bill C-11 could deeply hurt Canadian creators and viewers. In other words, all Canadians. For viewers who rely on us to serve them content that is relevant to their interests, artificially forcing an open platform like YouTube to recommend content based on government priorities would backfire. Matthew Hatfield from Open Media gave a great analogy. He said this, we would never consider a situation where the Canadian government would go to a Canadian bookstore and say, we've got a thought about what Canadians need, and these are the types of books that we think should be displayed in your front window. However, through the discoverability requirements we have in this legislation, that seems to be what we're doing. It's inappropriate, it's an overreach. If we're supporting Canadian content, it needs to be in ways that are respectful of and responsive to what people want. Let's be very clear. This bill is not about protecting culture. It's about giving the government more control over public discourse, the things that we can see, post, hear online. To have a government agency regulate the dissemination of information online puts Canada in step with places like North Korea, China, Iran, and Russia. The current chair of the CRTC, Mr. Ian Scott, has confirmed this is the case. He has said that user-generated content, in other words, your content, my content, anybody's content, will be wrapped up in this bill. But then he goes on to say, don't worry, even though we're given those wide-sweeping powers, we won't use them, just trust us. Well, if you're asking us to trust you, then why not just take those provisions out of the bill? And Madam Speaker, that is exactly what these amendments will do. We are asking that those powerful provisions that allow for an abuse of power be taken out of this bill and that Canadians be respected. The best way to promote Canadian culture is through the protection of free speech. Giving Canadians the freedom to create, express their views, and speak freely is what supports the proliferation of our rich Canadian culture. Our culture is held within the Canadian people, all of them. So this government has grown far too comfortable, however, with taking control. And as I come to my conclusion here, I wish to thank all of the Digital First creators who weighed in and expressed their views. And I also wish to thank the industry experts and the freedom advocates who worked tirelessly to expose the danger of this legislation. And I want to thank the thousands upon thousands of Canadians who have had their voices heard. It is for them that I contend today.
Questions and comments? Questions et commentaires? L'honorable député de Saint-Jean.
Je laisse le temps à ma collègue de Lethbridge.
I'll give my honourable colleague from Lethbridge the time to put her earpiece on. Thank you very much. I would like to thank my colleague for Lethbridge for her speech. Even though a few times I was not in agreement with what I heard, the Conservatives insisted that they did not have enough time to hear from many witnesses, and yet we know there was Scott Benzie from Digital First Canada, an organization that has no members but is financially supported by YouTube. A lot of YouTubers and vloggers testified there's 160,000 YouTubers in Canada. How many would have been enough for the Conservatives to be satisfied? That's my question.
The honourable member for Lethbridge.
As we went through this process at committee, there were only a total of 5 meetings held where we heard from witnesses. This is a piece of legislation that takes the Broadcasting Act, which is normally only applied to radio and television, and applies it to the internet. It is a massive change to the way that we do broadcasting in this country, or what is termed broadcasting. And so for the committee to only have 5 opportunities to hear from witnesses when there were more than 100 that asked to be heard was inexcusable. And so there still remains more than half of our witness list that never got an opportunity to have a seat at the table and to have their voice heard. So to have the question asked, how much is too much, and to imply that to give more voice on this would somehow be hindering the process? No, this is a democracy. We want to hear from the people.
Questions and comments? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, Government House Leader.
Well, we certainly know that this member had a lot of opportunity to speak at the committee, Madam Speaker. As a matter of fact, when the minister came to speak to the committee, this member filibustered the committee so that the minister couldn't even answer questions that were being asked by the committee members. I think it's quite rich for this member to get up and talk about the democratic process and how it wasn't able to unfold at committee when this member use tools that she has to specifically disrupt the operations of the committee and the committee, and so that the other committee members could actually do their work.
I do want to remind the honourable member for South Shore St. Margaret's that if he has questions or comments, he should wait till I ask for that and recognize him. The honourable member for Lethbridge.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The speaker opposite is being incredibly disingenuine right now. I did filibuster at committee, and I filibustered because the members opposite, the Liberal members at the table, actually brought forward a motion that was shutting down debate. And I did not want debate to be shut down because I believe that Canadians deserve to be heard. Unfortunately, they planned it very strategically to have the minister sitting at the table at the same time. So it appeared as if I didn't want to hear from the minister. Of course, Canadians who were watching know that it's not to be true, and it's incredibly disingenuous of this minister or this member to suggest that.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary had an opportunity to ask the question. He should wait if he's thinking out loud, then he should, or wanting to have a discussion, then he should take that out. The Honourable questions and comments. The Honourable Member for New Westminster, Burnaby.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I'm just saddened by this member's speech. I mean, we've seen how disinformation has undermined in the United States from the Republican Party the basic principles of democracy, and her comments today are so far from the truth that I find it very disturbing. Of course, for weeks and weeks, the Conservatives filibustered the committee, blocked witnesses from appearing. Even though all the other parties had submitted amendments, the Conservatives refused to move to actually have amendments to be discussed to improve the bill. The NDP got almost a dozen amendments through because we believed in working hard to improve the bill. And at the same time, Madam Speaker, it's important to note that what we have is a better bill because of the process, but not thanks to the member and not thanks to Conservatives who impeded at every step the due consideration of the bill that was so important. We had 5 weeks of witnesses.
The honourable member for Lethbridge has 55 seconds to respond.
I would like to correct the record. We did not have 5 weeks of witnesses. That is incredibly misleading, and I would give the honourable member the opportunity to apologize to the House actually for misleading. Thank you. We had 5 days.
Resuming debate, the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary of the Government House Leader. We have a point of order. The honourable member for New Westminster Burnaby.
Yeah, I will not apologize. We had the equivalent of 5 weeks of hearings. The member knows that. She should apologize for misleading this House.
A point of order. The honourable member for South Shore St. Margaret's.
Point of order. The committee didn't have 5 weeks. It had 5 meetings, 5 two-hour.
Point of debate. And therefore, I would ask members to maybe raise it during their speech in the House or through other questions and comments. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
So my 10 minutes starts now? Yes. Okay. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm pleased to rise today in support of Bill C-11, the Online Streaming Act. The Online Streaming Act will help ensure a strong place for Canadian stories and music in the digital world. It will make the online streaming platforms contribute their fair share to our culture. The bill is based on a simple premise. If you benefit from the system, you must contribute to it. This has been the approach in Canada for over 50 years, and the results speak for themselves. As a condition of their licenses, TV and radio broadcasters have to invest in our culture and arts. It's why we all have the Canadian content that we love so much. Madam Speaker, I grew up on a small street, quiet street in Kingston, Ontario. 5 doors down from me were the Sinclairs, and across the street from them were the Bakers. Little did I know as a 8- and 9-year-old paper boy delivering papers around the street that every time I passed by the baker's house and heard this loud music coming from the basement, that I was actually witnessing the formation of the Tragically Hip. Later on, they became the incredibly successful band that we've all come to know and love in Canada. Gord Sinclair, one of the members of the band, appeared before committee. I listened to his testimony in the committee, and I would like to share it with this House because I think it is extremely important and properly illustrates why this type of legislation is very badly needed. I believe that it belongs to be enhanced. Gord said in his statement, "My name is Gord Sinclair, and I'm a member of the Tragically Hip. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak today. The Hip set out from Kingston, Ontario in the mid-'80s, and our journey..." Madam Speaker.
There seems to be some conversations and some heckling, and I would ask members who are heckling to not do that, and I would ask those who are having side conversations with other members to please go to the lobby, have that conversation, and if they wish to come back and listen in on the conversation so they can ask questions and comments.